ready? Let's go. Hello, everybody. In case you missed it, the cover and release date for How to Write Romantasy have been revealed, and it's also available for pre-order. I have it linked below. Best of all, if you pre-order How to Write Romantasy, you have the option to receive a free digital workbook that will help you craft a power couple, throuple, or polycule that readers will devour. All the details are in the description. You want to get on it fast, so pre-order today. On to today's topic. In honor of the upcoming release of How to Write Romantasy, I am talking with best-selling romantasy authors so we can pick their brains and learn how they're killing the game. And today we're talking to Nisha J Tuli, the author of Trial of the Sun Queen. Nisha is an international best-selling author of glittering fantasy worlds, steamy rom-coms, and kissing scenes full of angst. Her book, Trial of the Sun Queen, went on to become a book talk hit, finding its way into the hands of A-list celebrities like Katherine Heigl. For her debut contemporary romance, Not Safe for Work, coming out this year, it should actually be available by the time this video's live. It features rivals to lovers trapped together at a corporate retreat where they find themselves with only one bed and one pillow to share. Nisha is here to talk about the single biggest trend in romantasy right now, shadow daddies. If you're in the romantasy community at all, you've heard of shadow daddies. Readers are frothing at the mouth for them. They're requesting books specifically featuring shadow daddies. It's a huge deal. Because shadow daddies are so insanely popular, lots of writers want to know exactly how to capitalize on this trend, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. We're gonna need a counter counting all of the times that we say daddy throughout this video. Actually, that might be too insane because we're gonna say it a lot. Thank you so much, Nisha, for stopping by today. It is so awesome to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So let's just get right into it and start with the basics. What exactly is a shadow daddy?
Well, first I have to introduce my mug that says tall, dark, and fictional.
I love that.
To me, a shadow daddy is like an aesthetic and an attitude. I know like some people say it has to be like shadow magic or dark magic, but I disagree because I think like I have a shadow daddy who has like aurora magic. So it's like colorful. And I've heard lots of people call him like a color daddy or which I like. I kind of want to adopt that. To me, a shadow daddy is more about, you know, he's protective, he's strong, he can eventually get in touch with his feelings. He knows how to treat a woman right, and usually is also tall and has dark hair. But I mean, there's always ways to break out of that too.
I love that. And I love that you touched on he doesn't necessarily have to have shadow magic, because that's something that we're going to touch on a little bit later is like mixing it up. It doesn't have to be identical. And it's funny you showed your mug. My mug is not shadow daddy appropriate, but it's sort of like the woman he falls in love with. I'm not always a bitch. Just kidding. Go fuck yourself. So
that's perfect.
We're representing both sides. So what are some of the key ingredients to crafting a shadow daddy that's compelling to read?
Well, I mean, I guess you don't want him to be too one-dimensional. There's a lot of times that can happen where it feels like a carbon copy of that same guy over and over and over again. I think definitely giving him a good backstory, like what's his emotional wound, like why is he a shadow daddy, like why is he so broody all the time? Because, you know, he must have some reason other than just being a dick sometimes.
Right, but, exactly. There's got to be something.
Yeah, I mean, I think like in giving him a unique personality, like shadow daddies, I think, you know, do have a lot of similar characteristics, and they're broody and can be a little overbearing maybe sometimes, a little overprotective, possessive, but like what also sets him apart? Like, does he have a sense of humor, or does, you know, even if it's a kind of dry sense of humor, like what is it about? Or is he very serious and by the book and follows all the rules, but sometimes not? You know, I think it's just like any trope, any sort of archetype, you want to make it your own by sticking to the script, but also finding ways to veer off it a little bit once you understand what the script is.
That makes total sense. And I'm glad you mentioned the emotional wound, because that is something that I see a lot, where someone will be like, oh, I want to write this tall, dark, handsome, broody guy, or any character type in there. And it's like, okay, but why are they that way? And then that's when it's like the loading symbol. They're like, I don't know.
And they need to grow too. Like, I think it's easy to fall into a trap of that's just how they are, especially when we're talking romantasy, when you've got like multiple books and like a really big long arc probably for your characters over many books. How does he change? Like, he can't just always be that angry from the beginning. Like, I think he needs to change. I think he needs to grow. He needs to have his come to Jesus moment of like, the thing that he believes is, you know, turned on his head, or he learns to open up, you know, like that kind of thing. Like there needs to be some growth there also, which is true of any character. But I think when we're talking about shadow daddies, I think it can be really easy to sort of just let them be too one-dimensional, because we are attached to the way they are when we start out.
And also because, you know, they're on trend. So a lot of people will see what they like, a character that they like, and they'll be like, copy, paste. And it's like, no, you know.
A lot of romantasy is often in the first person from the FMC's point of view. So it can be harder to develop that other character if you're only I mean, eventually a lot of them, I know with mine, it starts out as one POV, but it sort of grows into multiple ones, and then you get into his head a bit. But I think often the story is about her and he's sort of supplementing it, if we're talking male-female romance or whatever. Same deal if you're writing MM or FF or anything, but because shadow daddies could probably be a woman too, right? Like, I mean, we shouldn't just talk about men as being shadow. I mean, I have a shadow mommy in one of my books.
I love that.
I think it can go, it obviously can go both ways, but he needs to grow. They need to grow. They need to like become somebody a little bit different, even if like at their core they are who they are, but they still need to learn something along the way.
There are plenty of books where like a static main character or a static love interest is fine, but I think when it comes to romance, that it doesn't really work.
Yeah, they have to grow. Everyone has to grow. However many people you have in that relationship. Yeah.
Right. Because it's sort of like the romance is supposed to affect them, and you know, like change them for the better, or you know, or maybe for the worst, but in like an entertaining way.
If we got like a negative arc going, that's fun too. But I think that for the shadow daddy sort of archetype, like he's so obsessed with that person that he's in love with that it changes how they see the world, right? Like that's part of the growth factors.
I like to see the shadow daddy as kind of like the grumpy sunshine pairing, but like on steroids, you know, a little bit.
It can be,
although she doesn't, you know, the female character, if it's a male-female relationship, she doesn't necessarily need to be a sunshine character.
No, but maybe in comparison to him, she still seems like a sunshine.
Right. This kind of leads into the next question. Sometimes we'll see a character described as a shadow daddy, but instead we just kind of get a jerk with dark hair. What are some pitfalls to avoid when creating this type of character so as not to disappoint readers?
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about, like making him sort of too one-dimensional. I want to say almost leaning in it too hard, where like that's all he is just like, especially again with a long romantasy series, you have the freedom to sort of slowly feed it in, where you can see that person changing maybe really slowly, and it might take a while for them to get there, but you have the luxury of hundreds of thousands of words to slowly like make that transition happen. And I think you want to give a hint of it early on, that they're already realizing there's some, I don't know, like with Nadir in Artifacts of Uranus, he kind of doesn't recognize his privilege at the beginning. Like he sort of like doesn't think too much about people outside of his very narrow worldview. And when Laura enters the picture, she sort of makes him open his eyes pretty quickly. It doesn't take him long to suddenly be like, oh, I guess I've kind of been blind to this thing I had never given much thought about. And, you know, obviously it takes some time to sort of keep going, but you can see that the transition will happen.
If the personality type is just angry, why is the partner attracted to them?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Right, like, he's hot, but there's gotta be depth.
Yeah. And I mean, that also like leans into like, he kind of hates everyone except for her, which I mean, I love that one too.
Me too. I love that.
So yeah, there has to be like some dimension there. There has to be like kindness and love can be shown in unique ways, right? Like in him remembering that she likes cream in her coffee, you know, like just something small that doesn't even have to be said, but you can show it in different ways too.
Those are some of my favorite acts of romance, like in fiction and in real life, where it's just kind of like, oh, you know, here's this thing, I didn't like it,
just
whatever.
Remember this little detail.
Yeah, and then they like brush it off like it's not a big deal, but really it's like, you really thought about that. We can tell, don't lie. It's I feel like it kind of goes back to like the Beauty and the Beast thing with the library and everything. It's like, oh, I know you like to read.
You wonder, right? Totally. I think you would like these books.
Some shadow daddies are killing the scene, while others read too similarly to more popular characters that have come before them. What are your suggestions for keeping this character type fresh and exciting and not falling into cliches?
It's tough writing romantasy where there's a few books that are sort of like how most people enter the genre, right? Like there's a couple big hits that when people come to romantasy, that's what they've read so far. And therefore, when they read beyond that, it's very easy to think, oh, this sounds just like so-and-so.
Right.
Anytime you're writing a trope from enemies to lovers to one bed, what are you doing to make it your own? And I think that goes back to giving him a proper backstory, like what made him a shadow daddy, like what's what's his goal? Like, what is he trying to accomplish? Like, yes, there's the romance, but there's all these other external factors too. Like the fantasy plot is also part of the story, right? And therefore, again, you have the freedom to sort of give your characters, both characters, a lot more depth, because they're going to have the world that they're interacting with is going to react with them somehow, whether it's like family or the war they're fighting or the magic they're fighting or whatever it happens to be, which is why romantasy is so good, is because you get to have all of those factors.
Exactly.
Plus the romance. I think, like, to me, that's why romantasy is such a great genre and why it's so popular and why people respond to it so well. Yeah, backstory, giving him like something different. The backstories themselves can also start to get kind of the same. So I think sort of digging a little deeper into something that feels unique to the character, that works in tandem with the love interest, in tandem with the world. And I do think, like, just reading a lot of it, like, to me, the best studying is reading lots of books in your genre. Like, I'll read something and I'll have a completely different idea that was triggered by something I just read, even though they have nothing to do with one each other. But somehow, I don't know how that works. It happens to me all the time.
Sometimes I'll be reading something and think, oh, if I had done this, I would have written it this way. And then that's where the idea comes from. It's like, I like this, but I would have done it like, here's my unique spin. And then there you go. You got a whole character idea.
My two main series, I mean, both of them are brown men, which in its very self is different than pretty much 90% of the romantasy that is out there. There is that to consider too. Like, how are you making him like outside of the same white guy with black hair?
That's something that I talk about a lot on my channel. It's like, usually like the shadow daddy cliche is he is white guy with black hair, but he looks like a brown guy, but he's not.
I know, but he's racially ambiguous. Yeah, I mean, I could talk about that at length.
right. And then it's like he's got tattoos, he's got a unique color eye, and
we haven't even he's got interesting eyes, and we haven't even talked about the tattoos. Oh my god. Yeah.
The tattoos are probably magical.
Yeah.
He's got wings and he has shadow magic. And the thing is, I feel like when a character type is that specific, it's so easy to make yours different. Like you said, like, my guys are brown men, already that's different. Your guy had aurora magic instead of shadow magic. And like, I've seen people where they take the same character type and they give him silver hair, and already he feels fresh.
It's already a little bit different. Yeah. My other guy, he's a dragon shifter too. So like,
I love that.
To me, that kind of gives it another layer. And he has different magic again. So Shadow Daddy, yes, but not shadow magic. She has the shadow magic in that one, but
I love that.
This gender swapping things is always an idea to, I mean, not that one thing should be gender coded, but it's how like people pitch things and think of things, right?
Well, it's kind of like age gap romance. Technically, that's not gendered, but when you hear age gap, you think
and then you say reverse to say the woman's older, and it sounds stupid, but you are trying to get across a point.
Right, exactly. So even though certain tropes aren't gendered, people like automatically gender them.
Think of them that way. I know. Yeah.
But I did something similar where in my series, I was reading a lot of the bad boy and the good girl. So I wrote a good boy who gets
and a bad girl.
So she's the morally gray one, and she's like,
to the dark side.
And it's one of those things where it's not necessarily a gendered trope, but it is kind of, just
and like, does a shadow daddy have to be morally gray? I mean, I think I could argue that they don't. I think most of them are.
Right.
But I mean, I think one way you could play with that trope is to make him a little bit more like almost too clear cut about the rules, right?
Grumpy, straight laced.
Yeah, like almost to a point that it's becoming detrimental to him, right? So,
right. Like, relax.
I think you could play with that and sort of get the same vibe without him being like morally gray, being like almost too morally upright. But
you don't have to fall into cliches. There are so many opportunities. The world is your oyster. Don't be limited by just the same character because you liked him in one book. You don't have to.
Yeah, I'm start working on my next romantasy series, but I have him like, he writes letters, like that's his sort of like giving them something, like a different kind of thing like that, where expressing himself through letters instead of words is just, that's how he likes to express himself. So I think we can play with things in different ways like that. And again, I think that comes from reading a lot.
We love variety in our fiction. What are some other beloved character types to explore in romantasy and what we were just discussing? And similarly, how can writers subvert or pay homage to the shadow daddy character type?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can go in the other direction with like more of a golden retriever type. Cinnamon roll. I mean, I always joke about this, that I can't ever seem to make them stay morally gray. Like deep down, they're all cinnamon rolls in the end. Like, I don't know how to make them stay mean and evil. Like some people are really good at making them stay like bastards the whole time, and I love it, but I seem to be incapable of
I call them murder rolls, where it's
There you
like
go,
they're
murder
willing,
rolls.
they're
That's-
willing to cut a bitch for their lady, but
right, but
then
deep down, yeah, like
yeah.
So I think, yeah, like there's the spectrum of Shadow Daddy in there too. Like, are you going to have the guy that's just like a d- all the time, even if he's, you know, got his moments, versus inside they're actually cinnamon rolls, which I know is where I tend to end up leaning because I just can't help myself apparently. But yeah, I think the opposite is like a good guy, which we see less of. Why do we see less of it? I don't know.
I always go back to that quote where it's like a paragon character would sacrifice you to save the world, but a, you know, morally gray character would sacrifice the world to save you.
Yeah.
So I think people, you know, understandably so, want that, you know, like I want to be number one, you know.
Yeah, I mean I think that's part of the fantasy of romance, right? Like any romance to me is fantasy, like whether it's your office rom-com or it's your romantasy or sci-fi or anything, because like ultimately that is the fantasy, that he or she or whatever is like would knock down buildings for you. But yeah, I think subverting the same thing that we've been talking about, like give them different characteristics and depth and the backstory and all that kind of stuff, where you're not veering too far off because you don't want to lose the essence of what the Shadow Daddy is, but you don't want it to feel like the same guy over and over again either.
Right. Because that's when we get, like, I'll see people reviewing books and they'll be like, oh, Timu Rice-san.
Yeah.
Risan, sorry. Timu Risan,
Timu
Cassian. And it's like, oh, you don't want to fall into that, you know?
And I mean, it's hard not to. And even if you write somebody totally different, someone's going to say that.
I mean, this is sort of related and sort of not, but like in terms of reviews, I mean, there are certain things I feel like that are just unavoidable with reviews because, like, for example, I write romantasy, and I've had people be like, oh, there was too much romance in this, and it's a romance book, so I don't know, you know, I don't know what to tell you. It's like reading a vampire book and being like, there were too many vampires. So there are certain things that I feel like are just unavoidable. Like if you write romantasy, people are going to be comparing you to certain popular books out there.
Yeah.
And if you write rom-coms, they're going to be comparing you to other rom-coms. So certain elements of that are unavoidable.
But I mean, and that's what writing to market is, to a point, right? Like you want it to feel a little bit similar, because that's what, exactly, like nobody ever finished a book and said, I love that, I never want to read anything like that again. Right? Like,
I want something totally different.
Right? Like the minute you finish something you love, you're like, okay, I want something that feels like this again.
Mm-hmm.
I think the key to standing out is making it your own, which is a thing I think comes with practice, comes with time, comes with exploring the genre. Like
I completely agree. And that's the thing that I'm constantly trying to stress is, it's like, you can write to market, but still make it your own story, you know, like, yes, it, you know, obviously it, you know, it can be familiar. It could be, you know, even inspired by, like, I got the idea reading this popular book, but you can still put your own unique
stamp on it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of, I think, what separates books that feel like Timu this versus it's part of the trend and it's, you know, part of the romantasy world, but it's still its own story. This is what makes it special.
I have my second series that's my less popular series. I fully believe the reason is that the whole thing is based on South Asian world building, and it's very much not the same as a lot of the romantasy out there. And I feel like it's because it veers too far off, almost like people don't connect with it in the same way because it's not as familiar to them.
That's so frustrating though, because South Asian world building
I mean, yeah, it's also, there's some elements of racism and happening in there too, and all kinds of things going on there. Mm-hmm. But there's no question that my Fae Euro-coded series does better because it's a Fae Euro-coded series than the one that has different creatures and different mythology and a different setting. There's no question that those are received differently because of that.
Well, for what it's worth, I think South Asian inspiration sounds amazing because I'm not seeing a lot of that. I'm the one of those where I like
some people
different,
and some people appreciated it for that. I was so surprised when it first came out, and people were like, I've never had Indian food before, and I was like, what do you mean you've never had it? But I guess if you live in a small town in middle USA and there's no Indian restaurant, I guess maybe that's very possible. I mean, like, you could tell it was coming from a place of like interest in that. Like, it was like, this is really neat. I've never read anything like this before. And now I'm like curious. That's not the majority of readers. A lot of readers say they want something different, but ultimately you can see that when you look at the market, that's not how it plays out most of the time, right? Like all of the top romantasy books have a lot of similar elements. to them, and that's not an accident.
Well, I revolt. I reject that. Anywho, thank you so much for joining me today. Do you have any projects in the works, and where can everyone find you online?
Ooh, I'm working on my first YA, which will actually be dystopian.
Oh wow!
Dystopian or disto romance? I don't know. Is that catching on or not? I've seen a few people use romancer. And yeah, I just sold my next romantasy series to my publisher, and I'm excited about that. And you can find me at nishajtuli.com. All my stuff is there.
Awesome. And I saw that you have a rom-com.
Oh yeah, that too. Right? A rom-com coming in like 6 days.
Oh my gosh. Okay, by the time this video goes live, it'll be out.
Okay.
So go buy the rom-com, everyone. I love romantasy and rom-coms, and I write romantasy and rom-coms. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting.
Like even with him, because in an office romance, you obviously can't do the same things you do in a romantasy. But a lot of people have said, I love how you brought some of that same romantasy feel to this, the slow burn. He's a good guy. Like, I mean, he's not a shadow daddy. He's like just a regular guy, but with, slightly possessed, like one or two moments of broodiness that like work out.
And I saw, this is totally off topic, but I saw that you were inspired by like the workplace of like being a woman in engineering, I think.
Yeah, that was my first life.
I was a stockbroker. So
so you had some,
Yeah. So I saw that and I was like, oh, okay, I need to read this.
And I've had so many people say that. They're like, this is just like speaks to like being a woman in a corporate world, like just like
surrounded by men.
Experienced all of these types of things. Yeah, I remember when I worked there and me and my like the other women, and we'd be like, one day we got to write a book about all these crazy things that happen. And I'm like, okay, well, I finally did.
While I was a stockbroker, I was writing my debut novel on the side, and I started writing down, I kind of like a Word doc called Stupid People. I'm calling myself out, and I would just write down the insane, stupid things that my coworkers said throughout the day.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, you should just, write a book and just include it. But now I'm just like, I just want to be done with that. Like, I'm just,
I mean, it's been like many years for me, so I was far enough from it. And it's like, and it's not anything with the love interest. Like that's not the toxic person. It's the things that are around her that are toxic. And we always called it, the book was going to be called Dirty Old Men.
But that's what it is, though. Like, God.
That was going to be the title, and I'm like, yeah, there we go.
Mine would be like Finance Bros. Like,
oh God, yeah.
Crypto. And
why is it the same everywhere? I don't know.
Right. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This was so much fun and super insightful and informative.
Thank you.
She's like, yes. This was great, thank you. So that's all I got for you today. How to Write Romantasy comes out in October, so if you're trying to write your very own fantasy romance novel, pre-order it today. Even better, everyone who pre-orders can receive a bonus digital workbook. All you have to do is submit your proof of purchase. I've got details in the description below. You can also check out my first writing craft book, Shut Up and Write the Book, or you can check out the first 2 books in my award-winning romantasy series, The Savior's Champion and The Savior's Sister. They're linked below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I post new videos on Wednesdays, and I host live streams on Mondays, and if you want to be alerted as soon as I upload, ring that bell. Bye!
Hey there, this is Lisa Corton-Leone, narrator for Shut Up and Write the Book by Jenna Moreci. Be sure to subscribe to Jenna's channel and ring the bell. That way you're alerted as soon as she posts a new video. Trust me, you don't want to miss this stuff.